The Menendez brothers' fate is finally being decided, and the outcome is shocking. After decades behind bars, a Los Angeles judge cracked open a door of possibility that nobody thought would ever open: parole. For the first time since 1989, the infamous brothers who murdered their wealthy Beverly Hills parents had a chance at freedom. But when Eric Menendez sat before the parole board on August 21, after a grueling 10-hour hearing, his hopes were crushed. The board ruled against him. He will remain behind bars. His brother Lyle, meanwhile, faces his own parole hearing just one day later, with the entire nation watching. And now, after more than 30 years, America is once again asking the same haunting question: are the Menendez brothers victims, or cold-blooded killers who should never walk free? This isn't just about two men in prison. This is about family secrets, decades of public fascination, the blurred lines between justice and mercy, and a story so twisted that it refuses to die. Let's dive into the case that refuses to fade: the murders, the trials, the cultural obsession, and the shocking new parole battle. The crimes that shocked America. It was the summer of 1989 when Beverly Hills police discovered a crime scene so gruesome it made even veteran detectives sick. Jose Menendez, a powerful Hollywood executive, and his wife Kitty were brutally gunned down in their $5 million mansion. Their bodies were left slumped in the living room, blood staining the cream-colored carpet, with shotgun blasts so violent that Kitty's face was barely recognizable. At first, nobody suspected the sons. Eric, 18, and Lyle, 21, were seen weeping at their parents' funeral, dressed in black, playing the role of grieving sons. But behind the tears was a darker truth. Within months, investigators pieced together a shocking motive. The brothers themselves had pulled the trigger. The murders of Jose and Kitty Menendez weren't just another crime. They tore through America's collective imagination because they shattered the picture-perfect image of wealth and success. Beverly Hills was supposed to represent glamour, privilege, and untouchable luxury. Instead, it became the setting for one of the most infamous parricides in U.S. history. The brothers' defense: victims or killers? When the truth came out, the media frenzy exploded. But the brothers didn't deny killing their parents. Their defense wasn't about innocence. Instead, it was about survival. Eric and Lyle claimed they had been trapped in a cycle of horrific abuse. They alleged that their father Jose, a wealthy entertainment executive, had sexually abused them for years. They painted their mother Kitty as an alcoholic who turned a blind eye, too broken to protect them. The defense's claim was simple but shocking: these murders weren't driven by greed. They were acts of desperation. This divided America. Some saw two spoiled rich kids trying to justify killing the parents who funded their lavish lives. Others saw two young men finally breaking free from years of torment. Courtroom testimony was raw and emotional, Eric sobbing on the stand, Lyle recounting nights of terror. For the first time, the ugly subject of child sexual abuse was front and center in a courtroom drama broadcast to millions. The nation was polarized. Were they liars exploiting sympathy? Or were they victims finally speaking their truth? The original trials and life sentences. The first trial ended in a deadlock. Jurors simply couldn't agree. Some believed the brothers' claims of abuse, others thought it was just a convenient excuse for murder. The mistrial kept the brothers' fate in limbo, but it also kept America glued to their story. The second trial was different. This time, prosecutors focused heavily on the money. They argued the brothers were greedy, entitled, and wanted control of their father's multi-million-dollar estate. The abuse narrative was minimized. This time, the jury convicted both Eric and Lyle of first-degree murder. The sentence? Life in prison without the possibility of parole. For most, it felt like the end. The Menendez brothers would die in prison, their story preserved as one of the most sensational trials of the 1990s. But decades later, something unexpected happened. The parole twist decades later. Fast forward more than 30 years. Eric and Lyle Menendez are no longer the cocky young men who shocked America. They are middle-aged, their hair graying, their bodies worn down by decades behind bars. And yet, their names have once again become headlines. In May 2024, Los Angeles County Judge Michael Jessic issued a ruling that stunned the courtroom. The brothers' life without parole sentences were officially reduced. Now, instead of facing a guaranteed lifetime behind bars, Eric and Lyle would be serving 50 years to life, with the possibility of parole. The ruling wasn't random. California has been re-examining sentencing laws, particularly for crimes committed by young adults, acknowledging how brain development and trauma can affect decision-making. In the courtroom that day, both brothers broke down in tears. Lyle choked out the words, "I killed my mom and dad. I make no excuses. I take full responsibility." Eric, who had recently undergone medical procedures for kidney stones, also admitted his guilt plainly. "I did everything I could to get away with the crime. I am directly responsible for it all." For the first time in over 3 decades, the possibility of freedom was real. But just how real? Eric's denied parole hearing. On August 21, 2025, Eric Menendez appeared before the parole board. For 10 hours, he answered questions, revisited his crimes, and faced the reality of his past. He acknowledged his responsibility, admitted his earlier lies during the cover-up, and described how he has tried to rehabilitate himself in prison. But remorse wasn't enough. After hearing from both Eric and those opposing his release, the parole board ruled against him. He would not be walking free. His request was denied. Why? Reports suggest the board was unconvinced that Eric's release would serve justice. Despite his remorse, the brutality of the murders weighed heavily. His health struggles, including kidney surgeries, painted a picture of a man weakened by time, but it wasn't enough to sway the board. Now, Eric must wait 3 more years before he can try again. For a man in his 50s, 3 years is an eternity. And the denial raises an even bigger question: if Eric can't get parole, what chance does Lyle have? Lyall's upcoming parole hearing. Lyle Menendez's parole hearing is scheduled for August 22, just 1 day after Eric's devastating denial. Unlike Eric, Lyle has often been seen as the more outspoken brother, willing to openly express regret and responsibility. His emotional courtroom statement in May, when he admitted killing his parents without excuses, may work in his favor. But the parole board will face the same dilemma: should a man who executed his own mother and father ever walk free, no matter how many decades have passed? Speculation is intense. Some legal experts believe Lyle has no better chance than Eric. Others argue that the brothers' deep remorse, decades of good behavior, and cultural shifts in how we view childhood trauma could tip the balance. But the truth is, nobody knows until that final decision is made. The cultural fascination. If this were just another case, the story would have faded decades ago. But the Menendez brothers continue to fascinate new generations. In the 1990s, their trials were broadcast like daytime soap operas. Tabloids splashed their faces across covers, and the nation debated their fate endlessly. Now, on platforms like TikTok, the Menendez brothers are experiencing an unlikely revival. Thousands of videos, edits, and fan theories circulate online. Young people, many of whom weren't even alive during the original trials, are passionately defending the brothers. To them, the Menendez case isn't about greed. It's about abuse, trauma, and a system that ignored cries for help. This generational divide is striking. To older Americans, the Menendez brothers remain spoiled killers who deserve their sentences. To younger audiences, they are victims of systemic failure who deserve a second chance. It's rare for a decades-old case to spark such cultural fire, but the Menendez brothers seem to live in that space between villainy and victimhood, which is exactly why the fascination refuses to die. What happens next? So, where does this leave us? Eric Menendez will remain in prison for at least 3 more years. His parole bid was denied despite his remorse. Lyle Menendez faces his own parole hearing, but his chances are uncertain. For now, the brothers remain locked away. But the cultural conversation is far from over. As more and more young people rally behind them, as more social media campaigns flood timelines, the question isn't just whether the Menendez brothers will ever walk free. The real question is whether America's perception of them has already shifted, and whether the law will eventually follow public sentiment. Conclusion. 35 years ago, Eric and Lyle Menendez shocked the world by killing their parents in cold blood. Today, they sit in prison, older, remorseful, and still fighting for the chance at redemption. Eric's parole has been denied. Lyall's fate hangs in the balance. And so, the haunting question remains, are the Menendez brothers irredeemable murderers who should never breathe free air again, or are they broken sons who paid the ultimate price for childhood trauma, now deserving of a second chance? One thing is certain, America is still obsessed with their story.